Carla, and thanks for your statement this morning. I think it paints a very, very stark picture in relation to oral healthcare in Ireland, and it's only when you read it, the statement, that you would say that our oral health system is in a state of chassis. And correct me if I'm wrong, but our kind of public oral healthcare system was much in better shape 25 years ago than it is now. And obviously that has a knock-on effect in relation to, as you said in your statement, in relation to socio-economical factors. Because I think there you can tell and kind of gauge by people's oral health via their socio-economical circumstances. And this is a kind of very, very stark. And what is happened, obviously, and this can be employed to all our health, kind of the factors in our public health, is there's a two-tier health system in oral healthcare. And obviously, people will lose out in relation to getting access to, intervention at that particular time. So, in relation to the school screening programme, where are we at that? Obviously this is, I think, a key factor in relation to proper intervention, but obviously there's a lag. And in order to have a proper screening programme that children can actually get, proper intervention, what do we need to put in place in the next, say, 2 to 3 years to actually catch up with that lag?
Yeah, well, I suppose oral health is probably the one health area or health condition or health part of the health service where there's a visible, it's literally visible, the difference between somebody who can afford to see the dentist regularly and somebody who cannot. That's the remarkable thing about dentistry. And secondly, dentistry is probably singular in that prevention can resolve a lot of problems. So that is why the school screening service is so important, because first of all, it means a dentist sees a child at a young age and prevents problems. And secondly, all the children, regardless of their means or their background, are seen on an equal basis. So what needs to be done is more dentists need to be employed in the public service, because the dentists in the public service are specially trained and they focus on seeing children. All dentists obviously can see children, but if you specialise, then you're going to have probably a greater impact. And there are difficulties in hiring dentists. First and foremost, permission has to be given to hire the dentist. So for many years, when dentists were retiring and when they were going on leave, they weren't being replaced as a matter of policy. That has been relaxed, but unfortunately, when the HSE goes to hire dentists, it just simply can't attract them to work there. And that reflects a number of things, but partly the stress of working in the service where you're constantly dealing with children requiring emergency treatment exacerbates the problem. So you have fewer dentists and they are seeing children, in emergency pain relief scenarios rather than actually getting out and preventing problems and visiting the schools and heading off all of those difficult engagements. So in short, more dentists need to be hired. How do you do that? Well, you make the HSE a more attractive place to work, and we've said to the HSE on countless occasions, it isn't just about salary, it is about the working environment, it's about professional development. But realistically, if instead of getting out and preventing problems, you're dealing with pain relief and an emergency treatment for children, it's a very different job to what most people signed up for. Yeah. I would also make the point that while, rightly most people will focus on children, special care patients are also big losers here. Again, where the HSE isn't allowed or cannot take on consultants in special care dentistry because the law doesn't recognise the specialty of special care dentistry, where we have eminently qualified dentists working in the UK who want to come back here. The HSE can't offer them consultant positions because there's no such thing as a specialist division of the register. So what that means, the Minister for Health could, at the stroke of a pen, recognise additional specialties. That would have a huge benefit in terms of paediatric dentists, in terms of special care dentists, in terms of all sorts of specialties which are recognised in the UK, for example, which are not recognised here. So that makes it particularly difficult for the HSE to bring in specialists because by law there's no specialty in paediatric or special care dentistry.
And I presume because of cost and because of the kind of crisis in the kind of the dental treatment service scheme, more evasive dental treatment is happening.
Oh,
so more extractions, more than ever, because obviously the cost of root canals and all that is not covered by the medical card. Am I correct on that?
Well, root canal treatments can be covered by the scheme,
Right.
but I mean, a lot of the more expensive treatments are not.
So
Yeah.
then
and fillings, I suppose the biggest difficulty, you know, if you're to ask, and I'll turn to my colleagues, if you're asking a dentist what the single biggest difficulty they have is the fact that the medical card scheme, there's unlimited funding for extractions, but if you're talking about the key preventative treatments like fillings, there's limits put on it. So.
You're just constantly putting out fires, the most basic way I can describe it. That's what I mean. I never get a chance. The scheme never lets me cure my patient of disease.
Right.
I'm chasing my tail the whole time because we're faced with patients that come in that have extensive disease needs. And so the scheme only allows us to do a certain amount each year. So I have to decide what's the most important 2 fillings that I can do this calendar year. The patient may need 10. So I hope by next year I can do 2 more, and 2 more, and 2 more. By the time 5 years has come to the end, I've managed to do 10. We're back to the start.
Right.
And we start the cycle again. And I'm constantly dampening down fires where I've had absolutely no ability and there's no funding and no structure in place for me to actually talk about prevention. Why can't I just sit there, get that disease under control, then spend the money on the conversation, on lifestyle?
You talking about children?
Things.
You're talking
No,
about...
I'm talking about children and adults.
Oh,
That's
okay,
what we're
okay.
doing. We're constantly putting out fires. We never get to the end. The system, the medical card scheme, never lets me get to get my patient disease free. It just can't anymore. So I'm it's a vicious cycle.
Right.
So you wonder why dentists are leaving. I'm telling you, they are it's frustration.
It must be.
I feel like I'm pushing uphill year after year after year, and I'm still in it, and maybe I'm a foolish optimist, but I want it to get better because it has to be about the patient.
Yeah. It's very stark, to say the least. Just in my kind of final 2 minutes, I want to ask a question about people that go over to different jurisdictions to get cosmetic work. And obviously we know a lot of people have gone over to Turkey, different countries for extensive cosmetic work in relation to oral health care, which would be probably 1/4 of the price if they got that work in Ireland, to a certain degree. It's the costs are less, and obviously if people are kind of looking at costs and they can get that treatment in Hungary or Turkey, they will, if they can get it for half price, they will go to different jurisdictions. I just want to get your views in relation to those that have gone to other jurisdictions to get kind of very vital work in relation to oral health care, and there's obviously a kind of downside to that as well. I just have, in relation to things that can go wrong. And obviously if somebody presents themselves to an Irish dentist and they've got that work, if works have gone wrong, I'm sure the dentist says, I didn't make that mistake. I didn't, make that kind of mistakes and whatever and so forth. Just want to get your views in relation to all that kind of,
Sure.
I suppose, narrative at the moment that people have to go outside the jurisdiction to get oral health care.
And if it's okay, I'll ask my colleague, Dr. Reimer.
Thank you, Deputy. So I suppose the most stark statistic I can give you regarding medical tourism and dental tourism is that since 2019, 9 Irish people have died while receiving medical care abroad since 2019. 2 cases specifically regarding dentistry. We've no real reliable data on the number of patients looking for treatment abroad, and this used to be primarily an economic decision for patients, but increasingly, as we were discussing, it's becoming an issue of access. So if I have a patient who comes into me and they require maybe 2 or 3 crowns, they can go onto a waiting list for a couple of months. We may not have the ability to get them in. That's quite a big piece of dental work. So if I type into Google or Facebook dental crown, what I'm going to be bombarded with is a series of ads coming from Eastern Europe, other areas abroad, offering me discount rates for dental treatment, often for huge courses of treatment. So they're usually offered 16 crowns for X thousand euros, which would be significantly cheaper than Irish prices, of course. What we're usually recommending to patients is minimally invasive dentistry. So we're counselling patients for the majority of the day about cutting the tooth as little as possible. We want to preserve tooth structure. We want to, every time we intervene, we're potentially reducing the life expectancy of the tooth and then creating them more problems further down the line. So this patient's gone away with a recommendation of a treatment plan from me, and they come back for their routine checkup, and I can see then they've had either 2 or 3 implants and 16 crowns on top of them, or they've had the teeth which I would have regarded as being healthy have been removed and replaced with implants or bridges. These are often hugely aggressive treatments, which are very difficult for them to maintain, so they can't maintain adequate hygiene. So they're starting to collapse after a number of years. Often initially they're very happy with treatment, and the offer that they've received online is that they get to combine this knockdown price with a holiday in the sun. So it's very tempting to patients. But unfortunately we're dealing with the consequences, and they can be devastating to the patient. Oftentimes they've gone from maybe a reasonable standard of dental health to a very poor standard of health, and particularly we talk about Romanian dentistry, Turkish dentistry of a very high standard, but the problem I would have is with commercial enterprises aggressively advertising in the Irish domain through advertising online. But also, we would have had a month ago, we had a series of interviews on radio and in press where we highlighted this issue, combined with our colleagues in medicines in terms of bariatric surgery for treatments for obesity. We're seeing increasing numbers of people travelling abroad. The following week, in these print organisations, you see advertorial articles advertising the very problem that we're trying to highlight. So we have a huge problem with tourism, and these vulnerable patients are being lulled into these attractive offers, and unfortunately there is a lag between them getting the work and they're actually presenting with the problems. So you might 3 or 4 years before things start to go awry. But if you have had a piece of dental equipment welded into your mouth which you then can't clean, it's going to disintegrate, and it's just a case of how long.
Okay, thanks very much.
I suppose it also impacts on the healthy teeth. If you have a crown or an implant there in relation, if it's not placed, it's the other challenge. I presume dentists say to me that they're facing all the time, that there's people ending up with cracked teeth from.
The case that always jumps out to me. It was a number of years ago now, but I saw a gentleman in his 30s who did have quite a severe gum problem. But with the right intervention and seeing the right specialists, I say, again, we have a problem recognising specialists in this country. If you see the right specialists, they could have preserved their dentition, their bite, for many years. Unfortunately, he was tempted to receive treatment abroad, and he had a mouth of a combination of crowns and bridges anchored to poor quality teeth and implants, and within a couple of years, unfortunately, I had fit him with complete dentures in his 30s, and that does happen from time to time. You do have patients present with those kind of problems, but for him, that situation was grossly exacerbated by the treatment that he received, and he certainly ended up in a much worse situation as a result of travelling abroad. Dentistry abroad, there's absolutely no issue with quality of dentistry in some areas, but it's those commercial enterprises that are luring people abroad. There's often very little in the way of a comeback with those clinics. I would argue very strongly that patients need to look into the credentials of the clinic and the dentist that they're dealing with, and make sure that there's a recourse for them to have problems resolved. Dental problems occur as a result of any dental work, so we always have to be cognizant that things can go wrong, and that we would be aware of trying to help patients through that. But dental tourism is a huge problem for us.
The 9 people you said that have died That wasn't to do with oral, like cosmetics. That's generally cosmetic surgery, is it?
That is a combination of medical tourism, but dentistry does fall into
part of
that.
that?
We have unfortunately had cases of and it was to say that a month ago when we were asked to comment on this issue, unfortunately it was the sad passing of a gentleman who had been abroad to seek treatment